I'm basically going to talk about ethics and misconduct. So, in the ethics, I'll talk about medical ethics, I'll talk about scientific ethics, I'll also talk about ethics in general in life and the principles that everybody follows. So, the ethics that we have in the medical science are not different from ethics that you follow in your life. They are more or less same, the principles are the same. And the only difference is how we apply them. So when we apply ethics in life, we apply them to whom? Ourselves. When we apply ethics in medicine, we apply it to the patient. So that is the only difference. Here we think of ourselves, there we think of the patient. Otherwise, the principles remains the same. So let's start. That what are the ethics? Moral, all of you know morality. Morality is what governs a person's behavior. And it is important to understand because when I'm going to talk about the ethical principles, one of the ethical principles is based on the virtues and morality of an individual. So basically, these are the principles which tells us what is right, what is wrong, whether it is life, patient care decisions, or research. So basically, the application of moral principles or ethicality tells us what is right and what is wrong, what we should do, what we should not do. And when these are applied to research, we call it research ethics. When it applies to publication, we call it publication ethics. When it applies to medical, we call it medical ethics or treatment ethics. But the principles more or less remains the same. The basis of the morality is same whether you apply it to yourself in life or you apply it to a third person or a fourth person or a fifth person. You have to remember that morality and ethics are dynamic and they keep changing. So this lecture is not going to be enough. Next year you have to find out what other new decisions Supreme Court has given. Okay, there is a case which is being discussed recently and has made the headlines today. Can anybody tell me which moral case is being discussed in Supreme Court? It has a fractured verdict in High Court and it is now with Supreme Court. कोई बता सकता है? Marital rape. This is being heard in Supreme Court right now. So once the verdict on it comes, the morality and the ethics on marital rape will change. So there is a morality right now, but once a decision on it comes, it's going to change. That's why he said that it's dynamic, keeps changing. Society changes, law changes, rule changes, the ethics changes. So you have to keep updated that what is happening with rules and the ethics and then decide. So it's a dynamic principle. It keeps happening every day, every year. But in medical science, the biggest principle that we follow is do no harm. So even if you don't do good for people, do not do harm. Nuksan kisi ko mat pahunchao. That is the biggest principle that is followed in medical sciences. And as I said that when you apply the morality and ethics to yourself, you think of yourself first. But here what you do? You think of patient first, then you think of the society, then you think of your other healthcare professional, and then you think about yourself. So you is the last here. In your day-to-day life, you are at number one. So what are the principles? So the first principle is called the consequentialist ethics. These next few slides are very interesting. Listen very carefully. These are the ethics which are there for centuries and years. When I'm going to give examples, you are going to realize that ये तो बहुत पहले से है. ठीक है? And even though we give it a Western name like consequentialist, this is basically from our own Indian roots. When I'm going to give you the example of this ethics, you will realize that it is very much Indian. Now this consequentialist is basically, as the name indicates, consequentialist. That means consequence is more important than the action. So here the focus is on the results, not on the means or the path by which you reach the results. Okay. So it says that if the end is good, everything is good. So that is consequenceless or based on the consequence of your action. So can you tell me an example of consequential ethics in your mythology? Any god which followed the consequentialist ethics? Shri Krishna, correct, exactly. The whole Gita is about consequential. What was the purpose of Gita Upadesh? Karma, dharma, these are the two basic principles that is being read. But what is the purpose? Why did Krishna has to give Gita Upadesh to Arjun? What happened? Not the right path. It is consequentialist, the path is not right. Yes, Arjuna has said that Arjuna ने गांडीव रख के कहा कि मैं अपने भाई को नहीं मार सकता. So कृष्ण ने उपदेश देना शुरू किया कि तुम अपने भाई को क्यों मारो? तुम क्षत्रिय हो, तुम्हारा कर्म है, वो राक्षस है, तुम्हारा धर्म है कि पृथ्वी की रक्षा राक्षसों से करो. So consequentialist, because the consequence was कि अगर ये कौरव मर जाते हैं तो धर्म की रक्षा हो जाएगी. ठीक है, लेकिन पाथ क्या चूज किया? मारना, which is ethically wrong. ठीक, that is why this ethics is called consequentialist ethics. Here the consequence is more important and you are not bothered about a few people who are dying on the way to reach that ultimate goal of general benefit. तो इसको consequentialist ethics कहते हैं. अहिंसा परमो धर्म, सुना है? अगली लाइन क्या है? देखो आयुर्वेद में हूं तो ये तो होना चाहिए, आना चाहिए. ठीक है, तो अहिंसा का पाठ पढ़ा रहे हैं और अगली लाइन क्या कहती है? धर्म की रक्षा करने के लिए अगर हिंसा करनी पड़े तो वो अहिंसा से भी बड़ी है. So this is the main shloka that is describing the justification of killing of Kauravas by Pandavas. धर्म की रक्षा करी जा रही है. तो अहिंसा बहुत बड़ा धर्म है, परम धर्म है. लेकिन अगर धर्म की रक्षा करने के लिए आपको हिंसा पे उतरना पड़े तो वो अहिंसा से भी बड़ा धर्म है. That is how he is trying to explain the consequences are more important. A few bad people dying is not important. They are bad anyway. So if they die, it's not going to make a difference. So that is consequentialist. इसका exact opposite is the deontological ethics. Now deontologic ethics says that consequence doesn't matter. What matters is the right path. आप वो करो जो उचित है. क्या हो रहा है उसकी चिंता मत करो. अगर आपको मिल रहा है, नहीं मिल रहा है, नहीं मिल रहा है. अच्छा हो रहा है तो ठीक, बुरा हो रहा है तो ठीक. अब ये पाथ किसका है? नहीं. उसकी अगली लाइन खत्म हो गई. फिर वहीं आ गए कॉन्सिक्वेंशलिस्ट पे. गीता हमेशा तुम्हें कॉन्सिक्वेंशलिस्ट पे लेके जाएगी. उसकी दूसरी लाइन हमेशा कॉन्सिक्वेंशलिस्ट पे जाएगी. दिस वॉज द पाथ ऑफ नो. रामा इज ऑल्सो कॉन्सिक्वेंशलिस्ट. ब्रह्मत्या करके आया था, रावण को मारा था. तो जब हम राइट पाथ की बात करते हैं तो हम उन लोगों की बात करते हैं जिन्होंने प्योर अहिंसा का पाठ पढ़ाया, जैसे बुद्ध, महावीर, महात्मा गांधी. ठीक है, अब फिर मैं अहिंसा का एग्जांपल लेता हूं. तो जब ये लोग अहिंसा की बात कहते हैं तब ये क्या कहते हैं? और ये भी महाभारत से ही उठा रहा हूं. अहिंसा परमो धर्म, स च सत्य प्रतिष्ठिता, सत्य कृत्वा प्रतिष्ठां तु प्रवर्तते प्रवर्तय. अहिंसा सबसे बड़ा धर्म है, सत्य पे आधारित है, और तू सत्य के पीछे जा, अपना कर्म सिद्ध कर. यहां किसकी इंपॉर्टेंस है? यहां पाथ की इंपॉर्टेंस है। यहां वो कॉन्सिक्वेंस की बात ही नहीं कर रहा, यहां वो कह रहा है कि अहिंसा धर्म है, सत्य पे आधारित है, और तू क्या कर, सत्य के पीछे जा। तो वो आपको एक सही पाथ पे ले जाने की बात कर रहा है। तो ये डियोंटोलॉजिकल एथिक्स है। दोनों एथिक्स एक दूसरे के अपोजिट हैं। इसमें पाथ इंपॉर्टेंट है, उसमें कॉन्सिक्वेंस इंपॉर्टेंट है। एंड आपको याद रखना होगा, गलत कोई भी एथिक्स नहीं होती। एथिक्स इज ऑलवेज राइट। वो भी सही है, ये भी सही है। हम क्या अपनाते हैं वो इंपॉर्टेंट है। तीसरी जो एथिकल प्रिंसिपल है वो समरूपता कहलाती है, कॉजिस्टिकल एथिक्स। इसमें क्या करते हैं? इसमें हम ये देखते हैं कि पहले क्या हुआ, उसी सिचुएशन में जब दूसरे लोग गए उन्होंने क्या किया, और हम उसका एग्जाम्पल लेके उसी को फॉलो करने की कोशिश करते हैं। तो वो कॉजिस्टिकल एनालॉजी कहलाती है। मतलब अगर मैं कृष्ण को फॉलो करता हूं कि कृष्ण ने अगर ये किया मैं भी वही करता हूं, तो मैं समरूपता कर रहा हूं। मैं वही कर रहा हूं जो कृष्ण ने किया। मैं वो करता हूं जो बुद्ध ने किया, तो मैं बुद्ध की समरूपता कर रहा हूं। तो हम कोई भी एग्जाम्पल लेके उसको फॉलो करते हैं और उसको कहते हैं कि हम जैसा उसने किया हम वैसा कर रहे हैं। ये साइंस में नहीं होना चाहिए। मैं बताऊंगा क्यों नहीं होना चाहिए। इसकी मैं बात कर रहा था विर्च्यू एथिक्स की, जो मैंने सबसे पहली बात बोली। यहां पे मोरल प्रिंसिपल ऑफ इंडिविजुअल ऑफ प्लेयर इज इंपॉर्टेंट। अगर कोई चोर है तो पूरी जिंदगी चोरी करेगा, ये विर्च्यू एथिक्स कहती है कि अगर किसी का मोरल प्रिंसिपल खराब है, एथिक्स खराब है, तो वो पूरी जिंदगी गलत ही करेगा, वो कभी सही नहीं कर सकता। वो हमेशा गलत डिसीजन लेगा। चोर चोरी करेगा, डकैत डकैती डालेगा, मर्डरर मर्डर करेगा। ठीक है, ये विर्च्यू एथिक्स कहती है। उसमें क्या कर रहा है, वो आपको देख रहा है, आपकी विर्च्यू देख रहा है, और आपकी विर्च्यू के बेसिस पे डिसाइड कर रहा है कि आप क्या करोगे। अगर आप गलत करते हो तो आप पूरी जिंदगी गलत करोगे। इसके भी एग्जाम्पल्स हैं जहां पे गलत करने वाले सही हो गए। एक एग्जाम्पल मैंने नीचे दिया है, किसको स्टोरी पता है? रत्नाकर से वाल्मीकि की स्टोरी किसको पता है? बताओ। रत्नाकर से वाल्मीकि कैसे बने? मालूम है कि वाल्मीकि पहले रत्नाकर के नाम से जाने जाते थे, डकैती करते थे। किसने किसने बदला उनको? नारद जी ने, करेक्ट। तो ये एक एग्जाम्पल है। दूसरा एग्जाम्पल बुद्ध की जीवन में है। कौन है? अंगुलीमाल, करेक्ट। तो ऐसा नहीं है कि जो आदमी गलत करता है वो आदमी बदल नहीं सकता, लेकिन जब तक वो बदलता नहीं है तब तक वो गलत ही करता रहता है। अंगुलीमाल की कहानी मालूम है क्या? वो क्या चीज थी, वो क्या चीज थी जो अंगुलीमाल नहीं कर पाया? अंगुलीमाल ने बुद्ध से कहा मैं बहुत स्ट्रांग हूं, तो बुद्ध ने उसे क्या करने को बोला जो वो नहीं कर पाया? सारी एथिक्स वही हैं, अपनी किताबें पढ़ोगे सारी एथिक्स आ जाएगी। बुद्ध ने उसे कहा कि पेड़ के ये 5 पत्ते वापस जोड़ दो। तो अंगुलीमाल ने कहा गिरे हुए पत्ते कभी वापस जुड़ते हैं? तो उसने कहा जो काम सब कर सकते हैं, सिर काटने का, उंगली काटने का, वो करके तुम कौन से ताकतवर हो? ऐसा काम करके दिखाओ जो कोई ना कर सके, तब मैं मानूं कि तुम ताकतवर हो। So that is what changed Angulimal, and he realized that my power is something similar to what other people have. Anybody can kill. So what is great about me? So there is nothing great in being able to kill. प्रॉब्लम आती है कि हाउ डू यू पिक एंड चूज, कैसे डिसाइड करो कि क्या एथिक्स फॉलो करनी है? This pick and choose is applicable only in your life. It is not applicable in medical science. In medical science, it is deontological, rule-based ethics that you have to follow. I'll be coming to that. But in your life, you can pick and choose. एक निकल गई मेरे ख्याल से कुछ स्लाइड्स। मोरल प्रिंसिपलिज्म, दीज आर मिड लेवल थ्योरीज, दे आर नॉट एक्चुअली थ्योरीज। द थ्योरीज पहली 3 ही है, और ये अप्रोच है जिसपे बेलमाउंट रिपोर्ट बनी, और इस पे बाद में हमारा जो मेडिकल एथिक्स है पूरी की पूरी इज बेस्ड ऑन दिस प्रिंसिपलिज्म पे। जो सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है यहाँ पे जो मैं भी फॉलो करता हूं, वो है पिक एंड मिक्स. पिक एंड मिक्स कोई थ्योरी नहीं है, बट इट इज अ कॉन्सेप्ट विच सेज दैट फ्रॉम द थ्योरीज विच आर अवेलेबल you choose what you want to apply to a particular situation. ठीक है? So you can be consequentialist at one time, you can be odontologist at the other time. आप डिसाइड करोगे कि आप कौन सी चूज करते हो, एंड पिक एंड चूज आप अप्लाई करते हो. आपको जो सूट करती है वो आप अप्लाई कर देते हो. ज्यादातर लोग यही अप्लाई करते हैं अपने लाइफ में. ठीक है? ज्यादातर लोग जहां फायदा मिल रहा होता है वहां वो एथिकल प्रिंसिपल फॉलो करते हैं. इसकी प्रॉब्लम यह है कि what is good for you may not be good for society. That is one. And then everybody doesn't have the same view on morality. आपका व्यू, मेरा व्यू, आपके बगल वाले का व्यू अलग हो सकता है. तो this gives a kind of a difference between people, whether you are right or I am right. Like I said, marital rape, Supreme Court is deciding. So we don't know who is right. We don't know whether High Court is right, or the woman who is complaining is right, or the husband is right. We don't know who is right. But somewhere we have to come to a conclusion that what should ideally be done, or what should ideally be the rule. Okay. And this is another thing, causality. This is again not a principle, but it is a type of a personality, which is also called sophistry, where a person does what he wants to do and justify it by whatever means he wants to justify, even if it is wrong. He is wrong, he knows he is wrong, but he will still justify his actions. So this is a personality trait, it is not actually a principle. And here there is no right or wrong, he is always wrong. Okay, but he benefits from being wrong. That is what you need to understand, that he is benefiting from being wrong here. Okay. We can leave this. We can come to ethical and scientific research directly. Now, the ethical part, as I said, ethicals can be applied to the research, ethics can be applied to animals, ethics can be applied to humans, and then there could be a publication ethics that you need to follow, because it's on writing, so I'll be talking about publication ethics and misconducts also. The ethics of medical ethics are basically governed with what we call as GCP, or good clinical practice. In good clinical practice, there are certain principles that are not to be violated, and the first principle of research is called principle of essentiality. That means do only what is essential. अमेरिका में हुई, इंडिया में नहीं हुई, मैं इंडिया में कर लूं, it is not essential. And it is basically a misconduct. It should not be done. So you have to follow the principles of essentiality. Do what is essential. If it is not essential, then it is unethical. That is what you have to understand. Voluntariness and informed consent. Participation in research has to be voluntary, and there has to be an informed consent taken from everybody who is participating in the research. Non-exploitation, do not exploit anybody else, especially patients or the society. So non-exploitation has to be there. Privacy and confidentiality. Do not share the results of your research with anybody. That means if you have the results on a wife, you should not even share it with the husband, or the husband's results with the wife, until and unless they give permission for it to be shared. So confidentiality means if you get a research results, keep it to yourself, don't share it with anybody. And if it has to be shared, it has to be anonymized before being shared, even for scientific dissemination. Take whatever precautions are necessary and minimize the risk. That means your research subject should not be put at additional risk of death or complications. Then compliance, all rules, regulations, law University regulations has to be complied with. Compliance. Professional competence. Do what you are competent to do. Don't do what you are not competent to do. Accountability and transparency. You have to remember that for your actions, only you are accountable, and there has to be a transparency so that accountability is maintained. You can't have an accountability without transparency. So if you don't know what has happened, you cannot keep anybody accountable. So you have to have both the accountability and transparency. Institutional arrangements, again, are the arrangements that are at the institution level. Like for you, if you want to do research, you have a PRC, DRC, PPC that you have to go through. That are institutional arrangements. You have to go through them. And if you do not follow the rules of your university or the institutional arrangements, all research that is done by not following it will be termed as scientific misconduct. Then there is a totality of responsibility. Only you are responsible for what is being done. So what is misconduct? It's very simple: intentional wrongdoing. Okay. So if you intentionally do anything wrong, it is a misconduct. कितनों के पास टू व्हीलर्स हैं? कितने हेलमेट लगाते हैं? कितनों को पता है हेलमेट लगाना चाहिए? रूल है, फिर क्यों नहीं लगाते हो? So this is intentional. So what I was trying to show you that what intentional means. Intentional means you know that helmet should be worn while driving a two-wheeler and still you do not wear it. It's an intentional wrongdoing. And that is misconduct. When it is covered under law and the penal code, it is punishable offense. When it is not covered under penal code, it is a non-punishable offense, but it is a misconduct still. So if you do a plagiarism, knowing that you are plagiarizing from somebody's thesis or somebody's work, it is non-penal offense. You cannot be sent to jail, but your career will terminate. But if you do a misconduct which leads to somebody losing its life, you will be charged with IPC 300, manslaughter not amounting to murder, and you will be going to jail for 7 years. So you have to differentiate the misconducts. Misconduct is intentional, and it is very difficult to prove whether something is intentional or not. But it is also very easy, like I just did, that all of you know that helmet has to be worn and still do not wear helmet. So non-wearing of helmet in your case is intentional. Okay, it cannot be called as a mistake. It is a misconduct. So when you know the law and you do not obey the law, it is a misconduct. Okay. So when there is an honest error, it is not considered as misconduct. So if you do something without knowing, unknowingly, then it is mistake. And mistakes are corrected. Misconducts cannot be corrected. So we thought that India is very good and India doesn't have much scientific misconducts till I think about 2005, when the first case of Dr. R.B. Singh came. R.B. Singh was a practitioner in Moradabad. He's a cardiologist. He published almost 9 papers on diet and myocardial infarction in prestigious journal like BMJ. All his work was sponsored by ICMR, funded by ICMR. And then in 2003, somebody raised doubt on authenticity of his data. BMJ editor wrote to MB Singh, asked him for the raw data, and MB Singh said, eaten by termite, deemak kha gayi. So there are few things which very frequently happens. सरकारी दफ्तरों में आग लगती है, कागज दीमक खा जाते हैं, कमरों में बाढ़ का पानी घुस जाता है, अलमारियां डैमेज हो जाती हैं. ठीक है? Whenever you come across that, you should understand that the data was never there. Okay? How many documents are eaten by anybody's house by termites? Never. How many times your house is flooded and your documents or your steel almirahs get damaged in that flood? Never. How many times your house catches fire? Never. Or very occasionally rare. So why this happens only in sarkari daftar or research outfits, or when somebody asks for a data, तभी क्यों होता है? वैसे क्यों नहीं होता? हार्ड डिस्क करप्ट हो जाती है, बट मतलब आपको सॉफ्ट कॉपी तो रखनी, हार्ड कॉपी तो रखनी है. So even if your hard disk is corrupted, you have to give the hard copy. I'll be probably not talking about it, but then if you ask me to talk about the law and regulation, I'll tell you that what are the things that you have to keep with you when you are doing the research, and it has to be stored for 15 years. That is minimum. So when they contacted ICMR said that we only funded the research, and we have the reports just like you have, and we don't have the raw data because we never asked investigators to submit the raw data. So nobody had the raw data. These papers were withdrawn. Research misconduct is known since ages. I'm taking very old examples. Newton ka example. How many of you have read Rig Veda? Rig Veda has an instance where it is said that everything that falls from heaven falls to earth. हर चीज जमीन पे गिरती है. तो ऋग वेदा में न्यूटन का प्रिंसिपल और सेब का जमीन पे गिरना डिस्क्राइब्ड है. But that is not why I am saying that Newton has conducted scientific misconduct, because Newton probably had no access to Rig Veda, or probably would have not have read Rig Veda. But what he did is he fitted his equation, manipulated his equation to fit his data or his observation. Why we know that he did it? Because till 100 years later, when Cavendish found the gravitational constant, which is 9.8, till that time Newton's theory could not have been proved. G was not known to Newton. So if G was not known to Newton, how did he mathematically prove that gravitational force exists? And what is the gravitational force? So people say that he manipulated to fit his equation. Same thing is with Gregor Mendel. All of you would have read about his experiments, tall p and small p. You get one tall, one small, and two medium. Does it happen? No. Now we know that there is something called as gene penetrance. That means each gene has a different level of penetrance. There are genes which has high penetrance, there are genes which has low penetrance. Then we know there are genes which are autosomal dominant, then we know there are genes which are autosomal recessive. So Gregor's law could not have been applied, because कभी भी 1, 2 and 1 नहीं होता. अगर 4 प्रोजनी आएंगी तो तीन तरह की नहीं होंगी. ये भी हो सकता है कि चारों एक ही तरह की हो. It is possible depending upon the penetrance. So he was criticized within 100 years of his publication, and a lot of people say that he manipulated his results. Scientific misconduct. Louis Pasteur has been criticized. Nobody knows that how did he develop his anthrax vaccine, and people think that he tested his anthrax vaccine on people who didn't knew about it, or didn't inform, or there was no consent taken. Shakespeare has been, people say that whatever he has written is written by Bard, he is not written by Shakespeare. Then Lavoisier is there. Lavoisier says that he discovered oxygen, but actually oxygen has been discovered by Shelley and Priestley, and he conveniently didn't mention that oxygen has been discovered before him. So that is considered as a scientific misconduct. But the biggest misconduct is the Piltdown man. Charles Dawson is the biggest fraudster. This Piltdown man never happened or never occurred. This skull was basically a fabricated skull. and billions of dollars and more than 500 theses has been done on Piltdown Man. 100 years later, it was found that it didn't exist. It's fabricated. But the most interesting is this, we called as painted mouse. So this guy, Summerlin, was doing experiment on skin grafting, and he published this picture. And the black graph that you see is basically a black marker. So what he did, he took a black marker, made this spot on the mice, take a picture, and then published the data on skin transplantation on a white mice from a black mice. Okay. So this, and in the recent times, Wokus Wang is one of the biggest researchers on the embryonal stem cell by cloning, and he is in jail right now for fraud. All his research has been found to be fraud. All papers has been withdrawn, and the Korean government has put him in jail for frauding the people of Korea of money, because all the grants have gone to drain. Our own Dr. Bharat Agrawal, MD Anderson, 18 papers retracted. He used the same Western blot in more than one publication. So what they used to do was remove one blot from here, put a different ladder, and then publish it into another paper. So this has been done multiple times. So 18 of his papers have been withdrawn, and MD Anderson threw him out of the institute. There is a very interesting Wikipedia page on plagiarism in India. You should search it, read it, and some very big names are there. Some very big names, the people you know are there who has been implicated in scientific misconduct. And some of them have lost their jobs, some of them have not lost their jobs. And there is a very interesting paper here on PubMed Central, which deals with the history of scientific misconducts in India. That it is going from the pre-colonial era. That means before 1700s, the plagiarism in India was common. So we think that we Indians are very high moral. No, we have a very poor morality, and we cheat on the first opportunity. We are the most corrupt of all in the world. I think only Chinese can defeat us on that. We are at number 2 in the world. That is why the corruption is not going from the country. That is why the country is not developing. Because we are the worst people. We don't have ethicality, we don't have morality. We are looking at only our benefit and nothing else. And that is why these things are happening. This is from our Lucknow. 130 papers withdrawn from the Central Toxicological Research Center, Lucknow. This happened, I think, 3 years back. 130 articles, mostly because of image manipulation. Medical research, 18 papers from the ICMR scientist. This is this January, this year. This year, 85 papers so far, Indian papers have been withdrawn because of scientific misconduct. And if you think that BHU is spared, no. We have stalwarts in BHU also who have been implicated, and where there is a huge number of papers duplicated, 51 to the credit of this guy from chemistry. And if you think that there is no scientific misconduct in IMS, scientific misconduct has also been reported from IMS. Plagiarism has also been reported in IMS. No action has been taken, but this has been reported. And even this year also this has been reported, to my knowledge. Nothing has been done, but it has been reported. So why do you think the scientific data may be incorrect? So looking at what I'm presenting and the amount of misconduct that goes on word over, you ask yourself, is the scientific data that you read in journals is authentic? Or how do you know that it is authentic and it is not a falsified data? So there are many reasons for which the data can be wrong other than the scientific misconduct. If the design is wrong, the data is wrong. So if you have to measure the weight, you have to use a weighing scale. Okay? If you are not using a weighing scale, or you are using a taraju which has a 5 kg plus minus sign, your observations are going to be wrong. तो लोहे की तराजू पे सोना नहीं तोला जा सकता. Your design could be wrong, your instrument could be wrong. That will give you the wrong results. Your hypothesis could be wrong, your assumption could be wrong, because the hypothesis you have based on the research that has been done earlier is wrong. किसी ने फर्जी रिसर्च करके पब्लिश कर दी, आपने उस पे हाइपोथेसिस बनाई, आपने भी रिसर्च कर दी, तो आपका भी डाटा गलत हो गया. बिकॉज जिस पे बेस आप कर रहे हो वही गलत था. नींव गलत थी तो बिल्डिंग कैसे सही खड़ी होगी? Analysis can be wrong, interpretation of data can be wrong, then obviously ethics and scientific misconduct can lead to wrong science. But when it is a mistake and when it is a misconduct, it is very difficult to understand in science. किसी की इंटेंशन कैसे पता चल सकती है? पता चल सकती है? वो नहीं पता चलती, वो पता चलती है बाद में, जब वो पी के दोस्तों के साथ बैठ के बताता है कि अरे मैंने तो 10 का 100 किया था. तब पता चलता है कि ये भैया साइंटिफिक मिसकंडक्ट करके आ रहे हैं. नहीं तो कैसे पता चलेगी कि आपने 10 का 100 कर दिया? या आपका गाइड इतना अच्छा है, वो कहता है कि लाओ 100 के 100 के केस रिकॉर्ड ले आओ, केस शीट ले आओ, या कंसेंट फॉर्म्स ले आओ, फोन नंबर दे दो, मैं बात करूंगा. तब पकड़ में आती है, नहीं तो कैसे पकड़ में आएगी? तो गाइड के पास इतना टाइम कहाँ है कि वो 100 आदमियों के केस रिकॉर्ड देखेगा, 100 आदमियों का हार्ड कॉपी देखेगा. उसने तो साइन करने हैं और फोटो खिंचानी है हाथ खड़ा करके कि माय स्टूडेंट सबमिटेड एमडी थीसिस, माय स्टूडेंट सबमिटेड पीएचडी थीसिस. उसको तो नंबर गिनने हैं कि 5 हो गए, 6 हो गए, 10 हो गए. उसको इससे क्या मतलब कि क्वालिटी क्या है? और उसको इससे भी मतलब नहीं है कि स्टूडेंट बाहर निकल के क्या करेगा. स्टूडेंट की किस्मत है, जाए धक्के खाए. वो +2 को पढ़ा रहा है कि वो बीएससी को पढ़ा रहा है कि वो रिसर्च कर रहा है कि वो किसी डिग्री कॉलेज में या यूनिवर्सिटी में प्रोफेसर है, उससे आपके टीचर को क्या लेना देना? उसको तो खाली डिग्री गिननी है कि मैंने करा दी. तो इसी वजह से ये मिसकंडक्ट्स आइडेंटिफाई नहीं होते हैं, दे मल्टीप्लाई. दैट इज वन ऑफ द रीजंस. प्लेगरिज्म आप सबको पता है. प्लेगरिज्म इज नॉट कॉपिंग द टेक्स्ट बट कॉपिंग समबडीज आइडिया इज आल्सो प्लेगरिज्म. Then there is something else called redundant publication, duplicate publication, salami slicing. आपने एक पीएचडी की थीसिस की, उसके 5 पेपर बना दिए, that is misconduct. एक एक्सपेरिमेंट से एक पेपर 2 हिस्से में डिवाइड करके नहीं पब्लिश कर सकते. अगर आप 2 हिस्से में डिवाइड करके पब्लिश कर रहे हैं, that's called salami slicing. सलामी होती है लंबी सी, उसके टुकड़े काट काट के बांटे जाते हैं. वो नहीं कर सकते हो. पूरा का पूरा एक ही साथ पब्लिश करना है. और अगर उसको पार्ट्स में पब्लिश करना है तो मेंशन करके पब्लिश करना है कि ये पार्ट 1 है, ये पार्ट 2 है, ये पार्ट 3 है. 3 हिस्सों में मैंने डिवाइड किया है, बताना है. अगर आप नहीं बता रहे हो तो मिसकंडक्ट है. कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट है. मेरे पास पेपर रिव्यू के लिए आया, मेरा दोस्त का पेपर है, मैंने रिकमेंड कर दिया. मेरे दुश्मन का पेपर है, मैंने रिजेक्ट कर दिया. मैंने नहीं बताया कि ये मेरा दुश्मन है, वो कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट हो गया. देन एथिक्स एंड कंसेंट. यहां हम सबसे ज्यादा मात खाते हैं. हम लोग पब्लिश करते हैं, हमारे पास कंसेंट नहीं होते हैं. बहुत सारी चीजें हैं जिसमें एथिकल कमेटी की परमिशन नहीं ली होती. और एक कॉन्सेप्ट है कि मेरे काम के लिए एथिकल कमेटी की परमिशन की जरूरत नहीं है. हम ये अज्यूम करते हैं, सेल लाइन पे काम कर रहा है, प्रोडक्ट फाइटोकेमिकल ए का प्रोडक्ट देख रहा हूं मैं सेल लाइन पे इफेक्ट. मैं कहता हूं मेरे को जरूरत नहीं है एथिकल कमेटी की. Now you have to remember that whether ethical permission is required or not required is to be given by ethical committee. So it is ethical committee which is going to decide that ethical permission not required. You cannot decide of your own. So that means everything that you do, whether it requires human research, does not require human research, does requires ethical permission, doesn't require ethical permission, has to go to ethics committee. And ethics committee is going to tell you that ethical permission not required. So you have to have that document with you. Ethical committee telling you that permission not required. So it is for the ethics committee to decide whether ethics is required or not required. This is one of the common mistakes that we do, that we don't take permissions. Then we have to follow the law of the land, which is Schedule Y for clinical trials, that you have to follow. And then there are guidelines for ethical research. There are many of them that you have to follow. There are ICMJE rule of consent that you can go and read. This is something very interesting that each one of us do. Gift authorship. Head of the department है नाम डाल दो, director है नाम डाल दो. Gift authorship, it is one of the biggest offense. If you do not give due recognition to somebody who has done the work is also scientific misconduct. किसी दूसरे का काम है अपने नाम से छाप लिया, वो भी misconduct है. Or excluding people from authorship is again misconduct. So if somebody has done a substantial contribution which should make him a author, then his name should be there. Insider trading doesn't happen much in medicine, but it does happen. Usually happens in the drug development. I work for a company like Pfizer, and if I came to know that Pfizer is on the breakthrough and developing a drug, I tell my friends कि Pfizer का ये नई ड्रग आने वाली है, आप Pfizer का शेयर खरीद लीजिए, ड्रग आएगी, Pfizer का शेयर ऊपर भागेगा, and आप उसको बेच के कैश कमा लीजिए. That is called insider trading. That is also a scientific misconduct, but that also happens. Happens mostly with the drugs. Image manipulation बहुत तरीके से होता है. ब्लॉट से ब्लॉट गायब कर दिए जाते हैं और ब्लॉट में ब्लॉट बना दिए जाते हैं. दोनों तरह से इमेज मैनिपुलेशन होता है. But you have to remember that there are softwares, image recognition softwares, which can identify that a particular photograph has been photoshopped or not. और अगर एडिटर को जरा सा भी डाउट होगा, कहीं समझ आएगा, तो वो तुरंत उसको इमेज चेकिंग सॉफ्टवेयर में डाल देगा और तुरंत पता चल जाएगा कि ये स्किप डाटा होता है हर फाइल में. जैसे ही आप उस फाइल का स्किप डाटा खोलेंगे, वो आपको बता देगा कि ये फाइल कब एडिट की गई, किस सॉफ्टवेयर से एडिट की गई और क्या एडिट किया गया इसमें. ठीक है. So now it is possible to also find out the manipulated images. Whistleblowing. कौन डुबाता है आपको? आपका दोस्त. He is the whistleblower. Whistleblowing वही करेगा जिसको पता होगा कि आपने मिसकंडक्ट किया है. So the person who talks about the misconduct of others is called whistleblower. And these are the people who usually have the intimate knowledge of what you have done. So they are the people who are closest to you. रावण ना मरता अगर विभीषण ना होता. Yeah. So there has to be a whistleblower who tells people that this data is a फर्जी data, manipulated data, scientific misconduct. इसने ये किया, इसने ये किया. Then there is something called as muckraking. Muckraking वो है जो आजकल हो रहा है आसपास. कीचड़ उछालना इसको बोलते हैं. Actually, person has done nothing. He has done nothing wrong. But then you go public and say he has done it. Now it is for him to prove that he has not done it. Okay. Our legal system is such that normally we say that in law a person is not guilty till proven. But there are number of law where you are guilty till proven otherwise. जिसमें से एक लॉ गवर्नमेंट ने अमेंड कर दिया है, वो है It involved women? नहीं, डाउरी डेथ। डाउरी डेथ में पहले सीधे अरेस्ट होकर जेल जाता था, बेल नहीं होती थी, नॉन बेलेबल ऑफेंस था। नाउ यू हैव टू प्रूव दैट द फादर इन लॉ और द हस्बैंड इज इन्वॉल्व्ड बिफोर ही कैन बी अरेस्टेड। So that has been corrected by the government. But there are still law where you are guilty till proven otherwise. जिसमें सीधे नॉन बेलेबल ऑफेंस होता है, सीधे उठा के कंप्लेन में ही जेल में डाल दिया जाता है, बेल नहीं होती। नाम नहीं लूंगा लॉ के, बट देयर आर लॉ जो होते हैं। तो पूरा का पूरा जो पर्पस ऑफ लॉ है, वेयर यू आर नॉट गिल्टी टिल प्रूवन, इज टेकन अ बैक सीट। यू आर गिल्टी, अब आप प्रूव करिए कि आपने नहीं किया। लगे रहिए, पूरी जिंदगी लड़ते रहिए, प्रूव करते रहिए। तो मक रेकिंग में क्या है कि सिर्फ एक चिट्ठी लिख के डालनी होती है वाइस चांसलर को, और उसके बाद बाकी सब अपने आप हो जाता है। तो दैट इज कॉल्ड मक रेकिंग। आपने कीचड़ उछाल दिया, अब उसके बाद वो बंदा अपनी कमीज साफ करता रहे, है ना, दाग अच्छे नहीं होते। This is list of misbehaviors that people do. You can read it. There is nothing much here. But the main question is, why do people cheat? अपने आप से पूछो कि लोग करप्ट क्यों हैं, चीटिंग क्यों करते हैं, पुलिस वाले को 10 रुपया क्यों देते हैं, हेलमेट नहीं होता 50 रुपए देके क्यों निकल जाते हैं, हेलमेट क्यों नहीं पहनते हैं? Why do people cheat? साइंटिफिक वर्ड में इट इज पब्लिश और पेरिश। छापो नहीं तो बाहर हो जाओ। मेरे इंट्रोडक्शन में उन्होंने कहा कि 50 एच इंडेक्स और 7000 साइटेशंस, दैट इज व्हाट पीपल आर रनिंग आफ्टर। तो अगर आपको कंपीट करना है तो आप ये नहीं देखोगे कि दिस 49 और 50 हैज बीन अचीव्ड ऑन ए 30 years or 35 years of continuous work. My first paper came in 1994 and since 94 I am continuously publishing. So you will not take into account the period, but you want to beat it in a year. So how can you do it? You cannot. You can do it by only making फर्जी डाटा। डाटा उतनी तेजी से जनरेट ही नहीं हो सकता। एक्सपेरिमेंट जितने लोग लगाते हैं जो पीएचडी कर रहे हैं, दे कैन सी 5-5 साल में पीएचडी कंप्लीट नहीं हो पाती। तो आप एक साल में 20 पेपर लिख कैसे लोगे? आप रोज बैठ के भी लिखोगे तो भी नहीं लिखे जाएंगे। So they can be written only when there is a फर्जी डाटा or a machine, which is called as a paper mill nowadays. We call it paper mill, जिसमें कुछ भी डालो एक पेपर निकल आता है। तो पेपर मिल रिसर्च इज वेरी कॉमन। आप गूगल करके देखिएगा पेपर मिल रिसर्च पे, you will find a lot of things and it is mainly China, but India is also now coming up in a big way. So China, India and Iran, these are the 3 countries where paper mill research is at the top. कोई एक्सपेरिमेंट नहीं होगा, कोई सेल लाइन नहीं लगेगी, कोई रिजल्ट नहीं लिए जाएंगे, लेकिन पूरा पेपर लिख जाएगा। रात में बैठ के 2 कश खींच के सारे रिजल्ट बन जाते हैं, जो रिजल्ट बनाने में, और पेपर छाप दिए जाते हैं। But unfortunate part, who are the victims of misconduct? So we think that if we are doing a misconduct, other people are victims. No. Even we or our near dear could also be victim of those misconduct. ऐसा नहीं है कि वो सिचुएशन हमारे परिवार में किसी के साथ नहीं आ सकती और उसको वो ट्रीटमेंट नहीं मिल सकता। अब नहीं हो सकता, 10 साल, 15 साल, 20 साल के बाद हो सकता है। तो victim of misconduct can be anybody. It can be you, it can be your family, it can be anybody. और आपके मिसकंडक्ट का रिसर्च इफेक्ट अगर आप पे नहीं हो रहा तो दूसरे के मिसकंडक्ट का रिसर्च तो आप पे हो सकता है। अंडरस्टैंड? तो मिसकंडक्ट अगर होती है, फर्जी पेपर अगर पब्लिश होते हैं, फर्जी दवाओं के बारे में अगर लिखा जाता है, तो कभी ना कभी आपको वो दवा खाने की पड़ सकती है। So you can be victim of those misconducts or those research. Okay. And obviously all of you are taxpayers. So whatever research is being reported is from your money, which you are giving to the government in time of direct taxes and indirect taxes. आप इनकम टैक्स डायरेक्ट दे रहे हो और आप जीएसटी इनडायरेक्ट दे रहे हो, वो उसी पैसे से रिसर्च हो रही है और उसी पैसे से फर्जी रिसर्च हो रही है, तो आप भी लूजर हो, क्योंकि आपका वो पैसा वेस्ट हो रहा है, जिससे सड़कें बन सकती हैं, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर खड़ा हो सकता है, वो वहां निकल जा रहा है। हाउ टू अवॉइड ट्रबल? मेडिकल साइंस में दी बेस्ट थिंग इज टू ऑब्टेन ए कंसेंट। हमेशा कंसेंट ले लो, इन्फॉर्म करके कि मैं ये करने जा रहा हूं, ये करूंगा, और रिटन में लिख के साइन करा लो। दैट इज द बेस्ट वे टू अवॉइड ट्रबल। सेकेंड, डू नॉट ओमिट रिजल्ट्स। अगर तुमने 5 ऑब्जर्वेशन लिए हैं तो 5 को रिपोर्ट करो। अगर तुम्हें लग रहा है कि एक मेरी ऑब्जर्वेशन जो है बाकी 4 से मेल नहीं खा रही, मैं इसे हटा दूं, तो मत हटाओ, 5 को प्रेजेंट करो। डू नॉट ओमिट एनीथिंग, डू नॉट ऐड एनीथिंग। जितनी ऑब्जर्वेशन है सारी ऑब्जर्वेशन रिपोर्ट करो। देन whenever you are doing a subgroup analysis, always mention whether you had planned that subgroup analysis in advance or after getting the results you have done this subgroup analysis. हम लोग जब स्टडी प्लान करते हैं तो कोई सबग्रुप प्लान नहीं करते, क्योंकि सबग्रुप प्लान करने से सैंपल साइज बढ़ जाता है, तो हम सैंपल साइज बढ़ाना नहीं चाहते, तो हम सब जो है एक सिंगल ग्रुप में प्लान कर लेते हैं। ब्रेस्ट कैंसर को ब्रेस्ट कैंसर से कंपेयर कर रहे हैं, बस 30 पेशेंट इधर लिए, 30 पेशेंट इधर लिए, रिसर्च कर दी। उसके बाद हमने कहा कि ये स्टेज 1, ये स्टेज 2, ये स्टेज 3, स्टेज 4, हमने 4 सब ग्रुप बना दिए। उसके पेशेंट तो 30 ही थे। अब 30 पेशेंट को जब 4 सब ग्रुप में डिवाइड कर दिया तो क्या बचा? 7 पेशेंट बचे एक ग्रुप में, 2 में 8 बचे, 2 में 7 बचे। क्या हो गया? रिसर्च का डाइल्यूट हो गई। लेकिन वहां अगर हम मेंशन कर देते हैं कि ये हमारी पोस्ट हॉक एनालिसिस है, यानी हमने इनिशियली प्लान नहीं की थी, तो जो पढ़ रहा है उसको समझ में आ जाएगा एंड वो उस इंटरप्रिटेशन अकॉर्डिंगली लेगा। देन साइंस में एक और चीज है इंटेंशन टू ट्रीट। अगर मैंने 100 पेशेंट पे ट्रीटमेंट किया तो मैं 100 पेशेंट पे रिपोर्ट करूंगा। उसमें से अगर 10 मर गए तो मैं उन्हें हटाऊंगा नहीं, कि मैं कहूंगी नहीं साहब मैंने 90 पे किया था, मैं वो 10 भी इंक्लूड करूंगा जो मर गए। तो इसे इंटेंशन टू ट्रीट कहता है। जितने पेशेंट को ट्रीट किया उतने पे रिपोर्ट किया। ज्यादातर लोग क्या करते हैं कि जैसे मैं सर्जरी में रिपोर्ट कर रहा हूं तो मैं अपनी 30 डे मोर्टेलिटी हटा दूं कि 30 दिन में जितने पेशेंट मरे मैं हटा दिए, तो उससे क्या होगा? मेरी मोर्टेलिटी रेट कम हो जाएगी। I can do that, but then that is wrong to do. Okay. Then you should agree to authorship before submission. Check attribution and copyright release. Do not publish, pre-publish. Normally we say do not pre-publish, but then some of the journals now accept pre-publish. But then you have to understand that if you pre-publish, then all the journals may not take, because some journals do not take articles which are pre-published. So be very careful where you are pre-publishing and select the journal which takes pre-published work or doesn't take pre-published work. Because the journals which ask you to assign the copyright, जितने भी paid journal, जो non-paid journals हैं, they will ask you to assign the copyright. So when they are asking you to assign copyright, rules, there are not many written rules, there are no universal rules. Some of the rules exist. From situation to situation, journal to journal, university to university, you have to look for the rules. What are the rules applicable to your university? You have to find out. What are the rules applicable to a particular journal? You have to find out. And ethics is something which is not usually taught. This is something which we learn from our household, from our parents, or from the society. And we behave just like our society behaves. There is no structured teaching of ethics. And that is one of the reasons why we are ethically so poor. क्योंकि हम अपने बगल वाले को देख रहे हैं वो क्या कर रहा है, हम देख रहे हैं कि वो बिना बिजली के कनेक्शन के बिजली चला रहा है, हम देख रहे हैं कि वो वाटर टैक्स नहीं देता, हम देख रहे हैं कि वो ठेला लगा रहा है फुटपाथ पे खड़ा हो गए और पुलिस वाले को हफ्ते का 100 रुपया दे रहा है। हम क्या करते हैं? हम कहते हैं हम भी यही करते हैं। तो हम एथिक्स कहां से सीख रहे हैं? हम एथिक्स सोसाइटी से सीख रहे हैं। हम एथिक्स हमें कोई पढ़ा नहीं रहा, हमें कोई बता नहीं रहा कि कृष्ण क्या करते थे और बुद्ध क्या करते थे. So this has to be part of the curriculum. That is one of my suggestions. Then there is no mentoring. All teachers are busy. They have no time for their own student. They hardly sit with their student. वो सिर्फ फोटो खिंचवाने में व्यस्त रहते हैं, फोटो सोशल मीडिया पे शेयर करने में व्यस्त रहते हैं. उस थीसिस के अंदर क्या लिखा हुआ है, मेजॉरिटी ऑफ द पीपल डू नॉट इवन बॉदर. तो हम लोग, हमारी गलती है कि वी आर नॉट मेंटरिंग अवर ओन स्टूडेंट्स, वी आर नॉट टीचिंग अवर ओन स्टूडेंट्स दैट व्हाट शुड बी डन एंड व्हाट नॉट शुड बी डन. There are some classroom courses available. There are some courses like Dr. Patwardhan had taken an initiative and done. There are some web-based courses available that you can take and you can learn more about it. This is my last slide. Everybody does it. It doesn't mean that you should also do it. It's not an excuse. You have to take decisions for your own. It is your life. You are responsible for it. And you cannot blame that वो ऐसे कर रहा है तो मैं भी ऐसे करूंगा. Because if you start copying people, everybody will be blind. Or the society is going to become more corrupt than it already is. The morality and the ethics you will keep on losing the morality and ethics as you grow. So don't follow other people blindly. Think what is right. Think what is beneficial. Think whether it is beneficial to you or it is not beneficial to you. If it is beneficial to you, is it going to produce harm to somebody else? If it doesn't produce harm to anybody else, it is fine. But if to gain benefit, you are producing harm to somebody else, then it is not acceptable. So those are the things which you should decide. Consequences is something we can predict sometimes, but most of the time consequences we are not able to predict. We are not able to predict. That is what Dr. Patwardhan says, karmanyavadika raste ma phaleshu kadachana. That means you can do your karma, but what will be the fruit and whether the fruit will be given to you or not given to you is not in your hands. But then the second line again says, ma kam phal hetu bhurmarte samvotsa karmani. अगर आप फल की इच्छा रखते हुए भी कर्म करते हैं तो भी कोई बुराई नहीं है. थैंक यू.